Right, this is video 610. This is the last of the shapes that we are going to be finding volume and surface area for. Today we're talking about spheres. So a sphere, by definition, is if you have a center point and you have a fixed distance from that center point to the outside edge, then it's going to be all the points that are all the way around, everywhere around that given center point. So if you take your center point and you have a given distance that you measure out here, then you would have a circle. But it's not just one dimensional, it's not flat. It's all of the points that are below it and all the points that are above it and all the points in between. So if we take our sphere and we cut it in half exactly, then we have a hemisphere. So those terms you should be familiar with just from geography that you've taken. The Earth is almost a perfect sphere. Gravity pulls it into a round shape. Our hemisphere, we talk about the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, or the eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere when you cut the Earth in half by the equator or the prime meridian. That circle that is created when you cut a sphere in half, so if we took a tennis ball and we cut it in half, that circle that is created, that plane, is called the Great Circle. It would have to pass through the very center of the sphere, which means I wouldn't be cutting it open because I can't really cut very straight, or right through the middle. But that would be what the hemisphere is. It's the Great Circle that is left after you cut it in half. Right? Now, what's interesting about a sphere is it's actually one of the shapes that you can get a lot of volume in with the least amount of surface area. So if we had a rectangular prism that we filled with water and we could fill a ball with just as much water, that rectangular prism is going to have more surface area than the ball will, because it's just an interesting thing that happens in nature that God created, that a sphere, it has the smallest surface area for the largest volume. You see them all over in nature. So not only are the planets shaped like spheres and the sun shaped like a sphere just because of gravity pulling it inward, when a water droplet is falling, if you take out the fact that it kind of makes a teardrop shape just because of gravity when it gets really heavy, they are circles, they are balls, because that is the smallest amount of surface area, and that's what water wants to do because of the cohesion between its molecules. So how do we find the volume of a sphere? Well, guaranteed it's going to be some crazy formula because that's what we found so far. They all change a little bit. So I'm not making you memorize the volumes of all of these shapes, but you do need to be able to find the area of all the one-dimensional shapes. So the volume of a sphere is going to be 4/3 times pi times r cubed. So how you can remember that it's r cubed instead of r squared? Well, remember when we find the area of a circle, we're doing pi r squared. And our units for area are going to be squared every time. So if this was in meters, we would say it's in meters squared, right? Well, volume is cubics. So we're going to cube our radius in order to get our cubic unit there, because our radius is what our unit is going to be attached to. So let's do a practice one. Let's find the volume of a sphere with a radius of 6 feet. So I'm going to rewrite my formula, but instead of an r, I'm going to put a 6. So I have 4/3 times pi times 6 cubed. All I have to do is plug my 6 in. And now I'm going to solve these out before I put them in. So I'm going to find what 6 cubed is first. I'm going to do 6 times 6 times 6. And so I need 4/3 pi times 216, right? So the way I'm going to do my fraction here is I'm going to multiply across my top. Let me erase that box. I'm going to multiply my 4, my pi, and my 216 together and get a number. And then I'm going to divide that number by 3. So I'm going to do 216 because it's already in my calculator times 3.14 times 4. That gives me 2,712.96. And now I'm going to divide by 3. So that gives me approximately 904.32. My units is feet, so I'm going to say feet cubed. That's all we got to do. So surface area of a sphere is 4 pi r squared. So you'll recognize pi r squared as being the area of a circle. Well, now we're going to multiply it by 4. That's all we're going to do. So let's do the surface area of a sphere with a radius of 4 millimeters. So we're going to do 4 times pi times 4 squared, all right? So I'm just going to plug in my 4 times 4 to get my radius squared. So that's 16. So I have 4 pi 16. So I'm just going to multiply 16 times 4 times 3.14. That is approximately 200.96. This would be millimeters squared because I'm only squaring my units rather than cubing them. So this would be my answer. Go ahead and click on the link to do a couple of homework problems on spheres, and I will see you in class.